Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Thorne, and I want you to do something for me right now. Swallow. Feel that? That little catch in the back of your throat. That constant need to clear it. That sensation like something's always sitting back there, no matter how many times you cough, drink water, or clear your throat in a meeting and hope nobody notices. You've probably blamed allergies. Maybe you've blamed dairy. Someone told you dairy causes mucus, so you cut it out and nothing changed. Maybe you've just accepted it as one of those things about your body that doctors never really explain. Today, that changes. Because the truth is, most people, and even most doctors in a rush 10-minute appointment, are treating the symptom and completely missing the actual cause. And once you understand what's really happening in your throat, sinuses, and gut, this problem stops being a mystery and starts being something you can actually fix. So stick with me, because by the end of this talk, you're going to understand your own body better than most people ever will, and you're going to know exactly why that mucus keeps coming back. Let's talk about dairy, because I guarantee at least half of you in this room have, at some point, cut out milk, cheese, or yogurt because someone told you it makes mucus worse. Maybe it was your mother. Maybe it was a well-meaning friend. Maybe it was something you read online at 2 in the morning while Googling, "Why do I always have phlegm in my throat?" And so you did the responsible thing, you cut back on dairy, maybe even eliminated it completely for weeks, and you waited for that thick, sticky feeling in your throat to disappear. And it didn't. Here's what nobody tells you. The dairy causes mucus idea isn't actually supported by strong clinical evidence. Multiple studies have looked at this directly, giving people dairy and non-dairy alternatives without telling them which was which, and measuring actual mucus production. The result? No significant difference. What dairy can do is create a temporary sensation, a kind of coating feeling on the tongue and in the mouth when milk proteins mix with saliva. It feels thicker, it feels heavier, but feeling like there's more mucus and there actually being more mucus are two completely different things. Your brain is being fooled by texture, not biology. So if dairy isn't the reason that mucus keeps building up in the back of your throat, what is? The answer, in the vast majority of cases, is drainage. Specifically, post-nasal drip. Your sinuses and nasal passages are lined with mucous membranes that are producing fluid literally around the clock. This isn't a malfunction. It's completely normal. On an average day, your body produces somewhere between 1 and 1.5 liters of mucus. You don't notice most of it because it drains quietly down the back of your throat and you swallow it without even registering it's happening. It's happening right now, while I'm speaking, and while you're sitting there listening. But when something irritates or inflames those nasal passages, allergens, dry air, pollution, a sinus infection, even certain medications, that mucus production ramps up and its consistency changes too. It gets thicker, stickier. Instead of draining smoothly and invisibly, it starts pooling. It clings to the back of your throat, and suddenly you're aware of it in a way you never were before. You're clearing your throat. You're coughing. You're swallowing over and over trying to make the sensation go away, which, ironically, often makes the throat more irritated and produces even more mucus in response. This is why cutting out cheese and milk almost never solves the problem. You were never treating the actual source. You were targeting a suspect that for most people was never guilty in the first place, while the real cause kept operating quietly upstream, completely unaddressed. It's a bit like hearing a strange noise in your house and unplugging the television when the real issue is a pipe leaking 2 rooms away. The television was never the problem. You just happened to notice it first. And this matters because as long as people keep chasing the dairy myth, they keep missing the actual pattern their body is showing them. Is the mucus worse in the morning? That often points to drainage that's built up overnight while lying flat. Is it worse in certain seasons or certain rooms of your house? That's a strong signal pointing toward allergens or air quality. Does it come with a sour taste or seem to appear right after meals? That's an entirely different mechanism altogether, one we'll get into shortly. But none of these patterns have anything to do with whether you had a glass of milk with breakfast. Understanding that this is a drainage issue, not a dairy issue, is the first real step toward figuring out what's actually inflaming your sinuses in the first place, and that's exactly where we're headed next. Let's go one layer deeper because understanding that mucus comes from drainage is only half the picture. The real question is, why is your body producing so much of it, and why is it so thick and sticky that you actually notice it sitting in your throat? The answer, for most people, comes down to one word: inflammation. And not the dramatic, obvious kind of inflammation you can see, like a swollen ankle after you twist it. This is quiet. It's chronic. It's been running in the background for so long that you've stopped noticing it's even there, the same way you stop noticing a humming refrigerator after living with it for years. Here's what's actually happening inside your nose and sinuses. The lining of your nasal passages is packed with tiny blood vessels and mucus-producing cells, and their entire job is to react to whatever they encounter. When they detect something they consider a threat, dust, pollen, pet dander, mold spores, smoke, even certain chemicals in cleaning products or perfumes, they respond exactly the way your immune system responds to anything it flags as dangerous. Blood vessels dilate, tissue swells, and mucus-producing cells shift into high gear, pumping out extra fluid to trap and flush out the irritant. This response makes complete sense as a short-term defense. The problem is when the trigger never actually goes away. If you live with dust mites in your bedding, mold in a damp bathroom, or you're constantly exposed to secondhand smoke or heavy air pollution, your sinuses are never given the chance to calm back down. They stay in a low-grade, constant state of alert, swollen, irritated, overproducing. And this is precisely why so many people wake up every single morning already needing to clear their throat before they've eaten anything, before they've had coffee, before dairy could possibly be blamed for anything. This is also why allergies are one of the most common and most underdiagnosed causes of chronic throat mucus. And I want to be clear about something. Allergies don't always look like sneezing fits and itchy, watery eyes. For a huge number of people, the primary symptom isn't sneezing at all. It's this constant post-nasal drainage. Doctors even have a name for it: allergic rhinitis, presenting as chronic throat clearing. It can run quietly in the background for years without ever producing a single sneeze, while the person experiencing it has no idea allergies are even involved. An environment plays an enormous role here, often more than people realize. Dry indoor heating in the winter can irritate nasal tissue and paradoxically increase mucus production as your body tries to compensate for the dryness. Air conditioning that recirculates dust can do the same thing in the summer. Even something as simple as the humidity level in your bedroom can be the deciding factor between waking up with a clear throat and waking up needing to cough for 10 minutes before you can speak normally. Then there's a factor most people never even think to consider: your immune system's baseline state. Chronic stress, poor sleep, and ongoing low-level illness all keep your immune system in a heightened, reactive posture. And an immune system that's already primed and on edge is going to overreact more easily to smaller triggers. The same way someone running on no sleep is quicker to snap at something minor that wouldn't normally bother them. This is why two people can be exposed to the exact same amount of pollen or dust, and one of them walks away completely fine while the other spends the entire day swallowing and clearing their throat. It was never really about the trigger itself. It's about how inflamed, how reactive, and how overworked that person's sinus tissue already was before the trigger even showed up. And once you start looking at chronic mucus through this lens as a sign of ongoing low-grade inflammation rather than a random, unexplainable annoyance, an entirely different set of questions opens up. What's in your bedroom air? What's in your daily environment? What your immune system has been dealing with behind the scenes? Which brings us to another major, frequently overlooked contributor that has nothing to do with your nose at all, and everything to do with what's happening much further down. Now let's talk about the cause that almost nobody thinks to blame, because it doesn't originate in the nose or the sinuses at all. It comes from much further down, from your stomach. This is the gut-throat connection. And it's responsible for far more cases of chronic throat mucus than most people, including many doctors working under serious time pressure, ever stop to consider. Here's what's happening. Your stomach produces acid to break down food, and under normal circumstances, that acid stays exactly where it belongs, sealed off by a muscular valve at the top of the stomach called the lower esophageal sphincter. But in a huge number of people, that valve doesn't close as tightly as it should. Acid and sometimes stomach enzymes along with it creeps upward into the esophagus, and in some cases, travels all the way up into the throat and even the back of the nasal passages. When this happens, most people assume they'd know it, because they assume reflux always comes with heartburn, that unmistakable burning sensation in the chest. But that assumption is exactly where so many cases get missed. There's a specific version of this condition called laryngopharyngeal reflux, often referred to as silent reflux, precisely because it frequently shows up with none of the classic heartburn symptoms at all. No burning, no chest discomfort, nothing that would make a person think stomach problem. Instead, what shows up is a chronically irritated throat, a sensation of a lump that never quite goes away, frequent throat clearing, a mild hoarseness, and, you guessed it, persistent mucus that seems to have no explanation whatsoever. The reason this happens is that the tissue in your throat and voice box is far more delicate and far more sensitive to acid than the lining of your stomach, which is specifically built to withstand it. Even small, brief amounts of acid reaching the throat, amounts far too minor to ever trigger classic heartburn, are enough to irritate and inflame that tissue. And just like we discussed with sinus inflammation, irritated tissue responds by producing more mucus as a protective measure to coat and shield itself from further damage. This is why so many people with this issue notice their symptoms are worse first thing in the morning. Overnight, when you're lying flat, gravity is no longer working in your favor to keep stomach contents down where they belong. Eating a large meal close to bedtime, drinking alcohol or caffeine in the evening, or sleeping flat on your back can all make this dramatically worse. Some people wake up feeling like they need to cough and clear their throat for the first 20 or 30 minutes of their day, convinced it's related to dust in the bedroom or dry air, when the true source has nothing to do with their bedroom environment whatsoever. Certain foods and habits make this valve weaken further or increase acid production in general. Things like fatty or fried foods, chocolate, mint, carbonated drinks, spicy dishes, and citrus. Being overweight, smoking, and even wearing tight clothing around the abdomen can also increase pressure on the stomach in ways that push acid upward. And here's the part that connects everything back together. Chronic irritation from silent reflux doesn't just stay contained in the throat. Over time, it can actually worsen inflammation in nearby areas, including the sinuses, which means the drainage issue and the inflammation issue we already discussed can be actively fueled by what's happening in your gut, all at the same time, without a single one of these systems ever announcing itself clearly. This is precisely why so many people try nasal sprays, allergy medications, and dietary changes focused on dairy, and see little to no improvement. They're addressing symptoms sitting downstream, while the actual source keeps quietly sending acid upward, night after night, meal after meal, completely undetected. We've spent this entire talk uncovering what's actually causing that mucus, drainage, inflammation, and reflux working together, often silently, often for years. Now let's talk about what you actually do about it. Because this is the part that almost never gets explained properly, and it's far simpler than most people expect. Start with hydration, because it plays a bigger role here than almost anything else. When you're dehydrated, the mucus your body produces doesn't disappear. It just gets thicker, stickier, and harder to clear, which means it sits in your throat instead of draining quietly the way it's supposed to. Most people drastically underestimate how much water they actually need, and they replace water with coffee, soda, or tea, all of which can have a mild dehydrating effect when consumed in large amounts. Increasing plain water intake alone is often enough to noticeably thin out mucus within just a few days, making it drain normally instead of pooling at the back of the throat. Next, look at the air you're breathing, especially in your bedroom. Dry air is one of the most underestimated triggers of nighttime and morning throat irritation. Running a humidifier while you sleep keeps nasal and throat tissue from drying out and becoming irritated, which directly reduces the excess mucus your body produces to compensate. On the flip side, if your environment is damp or humid, that can encourage mold and dust mites, which are two of the most common hidden allergy triggers. Washing bedding in hot water weekly, using allergen-proof pillow covers, and keeping humidity in your home at a moderate, balanced level can make an enormous difference that most people never even think to test. Then there's sleep position, which connects directly back to the reflux we talked about earlier. Sleeping flat on your back allows stomach acid to travel upward far more easily throughout the night, elevating the head of your bed by even a few inches, or using a wedge pillow designed for reflux uses gravity to help keep acid where it belongs. This single change alone has helped countless people wake up without that thick, stuck feeling in their throat that used to take half the morning to clear. Timing your meals matters just as much as what's on your plate. Eating a large meal within 2 to 3 hours of lying down gives your stomach far less time to empty, which means there's more content and more pressure available to push upward once you're horizontal. Simply shifting dinner earlier or keeping the evening meal lighter is one of the most effective and completely free changes available to anyone dealing with this issue. It's also worth paying attention to specific foods and habits that are known to relax that valve at the top of the stomach or increase acid production. Excess caffeine, alcohol, chocolate, mint, fried foods, and carbonated drinks are common culprits. This doesn't mean eliminating them permanently or living a restricted life. It means noticing patterns. If your throat is worse the morning after a night of wine and a late dinner, that's not a coincidence. And that's exactly the kind of clue your body has been trying to hand you all along. Finally, and maybe most importantly, pay attention to your own patterns rather than chasing generic advice you read somewhere online. Is your mucus worse in the morning specifically? That points toward reflux or dry air overnight. Does it get worse in certain rooms, certain seasons, or around pets? That points toward allergens and inflammation. Does it follow particular meals or drinks? That points straight back to your stomach. Your body has been giving you specific, consistent clues this entire time. The only thing missing was knowing which questions to actually ask. None of these fixes require expensive procedures, prescriptions, or complicated protocols. They require paying attention to drainage, inflammation, and reflux, the 3 real causes we've walked through today, instead of continuing to blame the one thing that was rarely ever the actual problem in the first place. So now you know the truth. That mucus in your throat was never really about dairy. It was your body's way of showing you something deeper, whether it was drainage, inflammation, or acid quietly creeping up while you slept. The good news is that once you understand the real cause, the fix isn't complicated, expensive, or mysterious. It's hydration. It's your environment. It's sleep position. It's paying attention to the patterns your own body has been showing you all along. If this explanation finally connected the dots for you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button because we break down exactly this kind of "your doctor never explained it this way" topic every single week. And drop a comment below telling me when your mucus is worst. Mornings, after meals, or certain seasons, because your answer might be exactly what we cover next. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.